The camera was already on her before she even knew she was being watched. Not her camera, not her lens, not the polished, filtered eye of her phone that had turned her tantrums into trends, and her privilege into profit. A different camera, cold, unforgiving, fixed on the doors of a courtroom, waiting. The noise outside was familiar. High-pitched chatter, the rustle of expensive fabric, the faint tap of heels on marble. But inside, past the wooden benches and the dull overhead lights, the air was different, heavier, stricter, less impressed. And then she appeared. A flash of pastel, a halo of perfect blonde hair, oversized sunglasses in a room that didn't need them. She walked in like it was a brand launch, not a legal hearing. Her name was Lila Hart. To her millions of followers, she was a lifestyle icon, a relatable queen. The face of an entire aesthetic built on curated chaos and carefully orchestrated realness. To the people sitting in this courtroom, she was something else, a defendant. Lila's presence hit the room like artificial perfume. Thick, sweet, overbearing. Her nails were immaculate, painted and glossy nude with tiny, sparkling crystals at the tips. Her hair fell in soft, expensive waves down the back of a tailored cream blazer that somehow looked too glamorous for the sober wood and metal around her. Every inch of her screamed money. Not the old, quiet kind, the loud kind. The kind that needed to be seen, liked, shared, and envied to feel real. She wasn't live streaming, not today. Her phone had been taken from her at security, and the slight flicker of panic when the guard reached for it had been the only honest expression on her face so far. Now she was sitting where the lawyers told her to sit, still adjusting to the idea that this room had cameras she didn't control, angles she hadn't chosen, and an audience she couldn't coax with a hashtag. She removed her sunglasses slowly, like revealing a masterpiece. Her eyes were a sharp, icy blue, pretty, calculated, framed by heavy lashes and the kind of professionally sculpted brows that never seemed to move out of place. She swept the room with those eyes, not with fear, with evaluation. Who mattered? Who could be used? Who could be won? Her gaze lingered on the camera operators for a second longer, then on the front row, where a small cluster of younger spectators sat with parted lips and nervous energy. Some of them recognized her. You could see it in the way their faces lit up, in the tiny waves and whispers. Oh my God, that's really her. She's even prettier in person. She said this was all a setup. The echo of her own narrative followed her in here. But there was something else, too. Near the middle of the gallery, a woman clutching a stack of papers with shaking hands. Her clothes were simple. Dark jeans, a loose blouse, a cardigan with a pulled thread along one cuff. There was nothing remarkable about her. No glamour, no glitter, no camera presence. Yet the peso on her shoulders was visible. This wasn't content to her. This was her life. Her name was Dana Miller. Lila Hart had turned her into a villain the story millions had believed, without ever hearing her speak. Judge Joseph Wapner entered with the quiet, unshakable authority that always followed him. He moved with the calm certainty of someone who knew exactly what this room was for, and exactly what it wasn't. It was not for performances. It was not for branding. It was not for redemption arcs crafted for engagement. It was for truth and consequence. Everyone rose as he took the bench. Everyone except Lila, who hesitated for a bit too long, as if trying to decide whether this was one of those stand now for optics moments or something she could choose to ignore. Her lawyer touched her elbow. She stood. Her expression was neutral, but there was a faint wrinkle of annoyance between her brows. This didn't feel like her kind of stage. No ring light, no beauty filter, no option to cut, re-record, or delete. Just the hard, unedited now. All be seated. The wooden benches groaned softly as everyone sat. Leela crossed her legs, those pale, toned limbs perfectly bronzed from spray tans and vacations. She placed her hands on the table, fingers delicately laced, wrists showcasing a thin gold bracelet and a designer watch that sparkled under the flat courtroom lighting. She was ready. Not for justice, for the performance she thought this was. The case, on paper, looked simple. Fraud, defamation, harassment. A giveaway gone wrong. A brand deal twisted into a personal vendetta. A follower who questioned her. A storm unleashed. Dana Miller was not an influencer. She was a freelance graphic designer. She had followed Leela for years, saved her posts, watched her vlogs while working late, bought products she recommended, even when they stretched her budget. She was, in every sense, the ideal follower. Quiet, loyal, invested. That changed with one sponsored post. A luxury wellness retreat giveaway at an exclusive resort, flights included. Life-changing, according to the caption. For one lucky follower, selected from the comments of a branded partnership. The rules seemed clear. Comment, share, tag. Leela posted videos about how excited she was to give back to the community. She filmed herself personally reading comments and carefully choosing the winner. Her fans flooded the post. Thousands and thousands of names, stories, pleas. Dana almost didn't enter. Then, late one night after a hard week, she did. She wrote a comment about burnout, about working non-stop, about never having taken a real vacation. It wasn't a sob story, just honest. Days later, a notification. You've been chosen. A tagged post. Her username, her photo. Leela's excited face in a story saying, I just knew when I read her comment. She needed this. Dana had cried. She had screenshotted everything. She had told her family, her friends. She had turned down paying work to make space in her schedule. Then, the email. Not from the resort, from a brand assistant. The prize had terms she hadn't seen in the post. She had to sign a contract, she had to agree to appear in promotional content, she had to commit to postar certo número de curated fotos e vídeos durante o trip, tagged and approved. She had to pagar por certas fees e upgrades not previously mentioned. E o flight? That was subject to availability and might require partial coverage from her side. It wasn't prize, it was a disguised deal. Her image e labor in exchange por something que sudamente tinha condições. Dana hesitou. Something felt wrong. She had relido o original post a dúzia de vezes. A caption said, no purchase necessary. It didn't say nothing about fees, contracts, or mandatory content creation. She asked questions, politely. She sent emails, she got vague answers, smiley faces, deflections. Everyone does this. It's how influencer giveaways work. It's an amazing opportunity for exposure. That word again, exposure, always offered a people que already struggle to be seen. At last, she declined. She não foi rude, simplesmente escreveu que não podia pagar as taxas e não ficava confortável com os termos. That should have been the end of it. Instead, it was the beginning, because Leela Hart did not like to be questionada, não publicamente, não por alguém que she havia decidido framar como a lucky one. Então, so she did what she always did when something threatened her brand. She turned on her camera. O vídeo era 12 minutos longo. It was posted como We Need to Talk, com broken heart emoji e soft, tearful thumbnail de Leela looking into the lens, mascara slightly smudged. She sat in sua perfectly lit bedroom wrapped in a teddy bear robe, hair in a messy bun that had clearly taken 3 produtos e stylist. She spoke softly. She framed herself as vulnerable. She said she was really hurt and so disappointed in certas pessoas in this community que didn't appreciate blessings e were spreading negatividade about her honest attempts to give back. She never named Dana outright. She não precisava. She flashed blurred screenshots, just enough to show profile picture, fragmento de username, uns fragmentos de e-mails tirados de contexto. She framed Dana's perfeitamente razoáveis perguntas como ataque, as toxicidade, as gelosia. Suas followers fizeram o resto. Within hours, Dana's inbox filled with mensagens. Some eram mocking, some eram cruéis, some eram outright threats. She era called ungrateful, ingrateful, broke and bitter. They told her she havia arruinado chance thousands would have died for. Some of these comentários comeram de perfis falsos. Some comeram de brand accounts tentando buscar favor com Lila. Outros comeram de reais pessoas, pessoas que decidiram que defender seu ídolo era válido para destruir estranho.
When Dana tried to defend herself in his comments, she was drowned. Screenshots of her profile were passed around. Her work pages were review bombed. She lost clients. And Lila, she gained followers, sympathy, engagement. Her We Need to Talk video became one of her most watched uploads of the year. She made ad revenue off of it. Her brand partnerships praised her for her transparency. She went on with her life. Dana didn't. Eventually, she contacted a lawyer. Not because she wanted to sue a celebrity, because she had no choice. Because her name, her work, her mental health had all been chewed up for content and spat out for views. The lawyer looked at the posts, the contracts, the giveaway rules. He followed the money. It led straight to Lila Hart's bank account. Straight into this courtroom, straight under the eyes of Judge Joseph Wapner. From the start of the hearing, Lila's attitude was wrong, not just careless, calculated. She treated the courtroom like a hostile comment section she still believed she could control. Every time the clerk read something unflattering about her conduct, she shook her head slowly, eyes widening in exaggerated innocence. When her own email threads were presented, showing the shifting terms of the giveaway, she pursed her lips and gave a small shrug, like it was all miscommunication. Her lawyer tried to keep her contained. He knew the danger. He had seen clients like her, famous not for talent, but for attention. He had seen them crumble under real pressure. But Lila was not used to silence. She was used to directing the conversation. As Dana testified, voice shaking as she described the online onslaught, the constant pings of hatred, the sinking dread of watching her professional reputation erode in real time, Lila did what she always did when someone criticized her. She rolled her eyes, tiny movements, but the cameras caught them. A smirk at the corner of her mouth when Dana described being called a leech, a scoff when she mentioned losing 3 clients in a week. Under the table, Lila's foot tacked impatiently. This was boring to her, a drag, a mess she had to appear for like a PR obligation, not something that could touch her, not really. She had posted 3 stories before coming in today. Soft focus, muted colors, captioned, "Hard day. Sometimes being kind gets you hurt, but we stay graceful." Her fans had flooded the comments with hearts. Protect her. She doesn't deserve this negativity. She always gives so much. They had no idea she was about to sit in front of a man who had never, in his life, cared how many hearts someone got. Judge Wapner watched everything. He listened to the lawyer's arguments about industry norms, about misunderstandings, about online culture. He listened to the story of a giveaway that had been structured as a disguised deal. He listened to Dana's quiet explanation of how her life had been dismantled, not by a punch, not by a car accident, but by something more insidious, a digital mob, pulled into reality by uma mulher que sentava agora em tailor blazer pretendendo suas mãos estavam limpas. Ele leu os prints cópias de Lila's deletados tweets, As que escreveu como "Some people really show their true colors when they get chosen and then start acting like victims", com cautelosamente escolhidos emojis que levaram seus followers notar exatamente quem atacar sem nunca mencioná-la. Ele levantou a vista quando essas palavras foram lidas em voz alta. Sua face ficou levemente vermelha, não com chame, com a noia. She had deleted those. She had curated her feed. Why were they still here? Why were they allowed a existir in this room when she had erased-las online? That was the first crack in her composure. Not the harm, not the evidence, the loss de control over a narrative. Her lawyer tried to steer things back to strategy. He pointed out que she'd posted a clarification video days later, that she'd never told anyone to harass Dana explicitly, that the threats came from individuals she could not control. He pointed to her apology, the one with the beige sweater, the bare face, the quiet music in the background, where she said she was sorry if anyone felt hurt by how things played out. Sorry if, felt hurt, not sorry for, not sorry about. The difference mattered. Maybe not to her followers, but to this man, to this room, to this law. When it was Lila's turn to speak, the atmosphere shifted. She ajustou seu blazer, tiltou seu queixo e voltou ao stand like it was on interview set. She sat with her back straight, shoulders relaxed, hands folded in her lap, a picture de composure. The oath was given. She said, "I do," with an steady voice, as if she said it on camera every day. Her lawyer asked safe questions first, her background, her journey, how she had built everything from nothing, how she had always loved connecting with people. She talked about community, about wanting to uplift her followers. Her voice softened when he spoke about giving back. She described the giveaway as something from the heart that had been twisted. She disdained Dana had been aggressive in her emails. She spoke of feeling attacked, of crying all night after reading hateful comments directed at me too. She tried to paint herself up as the wounded one, the misunderstood one. Her eyes glistened at the edges. It was a performance honed through 1,000 videos, the breaths, the pauses, the trembling voice at just the right word. In frente of uma lens que ele controlava, it would have worked. In front of this bench, it landed diferentemente. A gallery watched, some with skepticism, some com fúria, a few com inconfortável reconhecimento de como facilmente palavras online podem ser exponadas. Then I stayed red at her hands. She couldn't look at Lila. Not yet. Not like this. Then it was Judge Wapner's turn. He didn't lean back. He didn't lean forward. He simply fixed his gaze on Lila and began to ask questions in a voice that was calm, clear, and surgically precise. "Miss Hart," he said, "your counsel has spoken at length about your intentions. I'd like to talk about your actions." The word landed heavy. Actions. Not captions, not aesthetics, not feelings. Actions. He lifted a sheet of paper, a printed screenshot. "This is your original giveaway post," he said. "It states that the winner would receive an all-expenses-paid trip to a wellness retreat. Is that accurate?" "Yes, Your Honor," she said smoothly. "That was the plan." "Does it mention," he continued, "any fees, mandatory content obligations, or contract requirements in the body of the post?" She shifted. "No, but there was a link to full terms." "In a separate page," he finished for her. One that was not obvious to all participants. He flipped to another page. "This is the contract sent to Miss Miller," he went on. "In it, she is required to produce a minimum number of branded posts, pay certain resort fees, and effectively function as an unpaid promoter in exchange for the trip." He looked at her. "Do you consider that consistent with the gift described in your original post?" Lila gave a small, practiced sigh. "There was miscommunication between my team and the brand." "That's not what I asked," he said, cutting through her answer with a firmness that made a few heads in the gallery lift. I asked if you consider this consistent. Her jaw tightened, a micro-expression, gone in an instant. I think it was industry standard, she said. Giveaways are always collaborations with brands. Everyone understands. Everyone, he repeated, or just the people who do what you do. She opened her mouth, closed it. He went on. Industry standard is not a defense for misleading your audience, he said. You promised one thing, you delivered another. Then, when Miss Miller questioned that discrepancy, you chose not to correct the misunderstanding privately and honestly, but to frame her publicly as ungrateful and toxic, knowing full well the influence you hold over your followers. The gallery hummed with a low, tense energy. He had said what many had suspected, what some had posted in angry comments that were buried under waves of fan praise. He had said it with no emojis, no trending sound, just truth. You have repeatedly insisted, he continued, that you never told anyone to harass Miss Miller, and indeed, I have not seen any explicit instruction to do so. Leela's shoulders relaxed slightly. Her lawyer did too. But, Wapner added, you did not have to. He picked up another sheet, a transcript of her "We Need to Talk" video. Here, he read, you describe her as negative, ungrateful, and someone who doesn't appreciate blessings. You show partial, blurred screenshots of her messages. You talk about being hurt and betrayed. You post this to millions of people who follow you, many of whom see you as a friend, a leader, and authority. He set the paper down. What, he asked, did you think would happen next? Her lips parted. The first hint of irritação creptou em seu tono. I can't control how people react, she said. It's not fair to hold me responsible for strangers' behavior. I was just sharing my feelings. That's my job. That's what my audience expects. Your job, he interrupted, is what you choose it to be. You chose a job that gives you influence. Influence carries responsibility. You do not get the benefits of that influence, the money, the gifts, the sponsorships, without also being held to account when you weaponize it. The word hung there, weaponize. It was exact. It was undeniable. What you did, he continued, voice steady, was not simply sharing your feelings. It was directing a spotlight at a private citizen who had less power than you. You painted a target without needing to say the word attack. Her eyes hardened. The softness vanished. She wasn't in control, and she hated it. The tension in the room tightened like a wire. The spectators sat still, some leaning so far forward their elbows dug into the benches in front of them. They wanted to see, not just what would be said, what would break. Would Leela crumble? Would she rage? Would she double down? She chose arrogance. It was the only language she really knew. With a small, derisive laugh that didn't belong in a courtroom, she shook her head. I think people are being dramatic, she said. It was a video. People get hate online every day. I get hate all the time. I deal with it. She could have just turned off her phone. There it was. The crack turned chasm. The mask dropped. No vulnerability. No, we're all human. Just pure, distilled entitlement. Dana flinched like she'd been struck. In the gallery, someone whispered, "Wow," under their breath. Another shook their head, disbelief written all over their face. Even Leela's lawyer closed his eyes for a heartbeat, jaw tightening, as if physically bracing for impact. Judge Wapner didn't raise his voice. He didn't need to. When he spoke next, every syllable carried a chill. "Turn off her phone," he repeated. While her business pages were flooded, while clients were emailing to cancel contracts, while strangers were posting her picture, her name, her workplace, calling her a thief, a leech, a liar. Your followers didn't just send mean messages, Miss Hart. They interfered with her livelihood. They made her world unsafe. He leaned in just slightly. You started that avalanche, he said. Then you stepped aside and filmed more content from the top of the hill. The metaphor hit hard, visible, undeniable. You built your career, he continued, on the idea that your words matter, that your opinions matter, that when you speak, people listen. Brands pay you because of that. Followers praise you because of that. He paused. Yet now, he went on, when those same words cause harm, you want to pretend they're weightless. That is not how this works. Not in here. Her nostrils flared. She was used to adoration, to criticism that could be deleted, blocked, muted. She wasn't used to someone standing in front of her, refusing to be charmed or intimidated, cutting through every defense like it was mist. The defense tried to recontrol. Her lawyer rose, voice quick and practiced. Your Honor, with respect, my client did issue an apology. An apology, Wapner said, turning a page, in which she stated she was sorry if people felt hurt and sorry the situation got messy. That is not an apology for specific actions. That is a statement designed to preserve image, not repair damage. He lifted another document. This court has also reviewed bank records indicating that your "We Need to Talk" video, released at the height of this situation, generated significant ad revenue. He looked at Lila. You profited, he said, each word sharp, from broadcasting this dispute to your audience, from framing yourself as the victim, from painting Miss Miller as the problem. He let that sink in. Dana's eyes filled, not with shock. She had suspected this, but seeing it in writing, in numbers, under a judge's voice, made it real in a way no angry DMs ever could. Lila shifted. Her fingers tapped once on the wooden stand, a tiny, impatient beat. So what, she said at last, the last layer of polished restraint crumbling. All creators monetize. That's how we survive. It's a business. I didn't tell anyone to lose her clients. I can't be blamed because people overreacted. Everyone's always looking for someone to blame when they can't handle the internet. Gasps this time, small, uncontrolled. The rawness of her contempt shocked even some of her admirers in the room. You could see it in their faces, the way their idealized image of her shattered in a second. Here, stripped of filters and edits, she wasn't a relatable queen. She was cruel, detached, self-absorbed to the point of oblivion. And now, finally, undeniably, exposed. Judge Wapner no longer looked merely serious. He looked tired, not physically, morally. Tired of seeing the same pattern dressed in new clothes, old cruelty in new platforms. What you call the internet, Miss Hart, he said, voice low but resonant, is not a separate universe where actions lack consequence. It is an extension of this one. Words spoken there can destroy lives here. He gestured lightly toward Dana. This woman is not a username, he continued. She is a person, with rent, with bills, with a reputation that she spent years building. When you unleashed your audience on her, you did not simply let off steam. You used the most powerful tool you have, your voice, to crush someone with less power. He paused. Under the law, he said, that has a name. The room held its breath. Defamation, harassment, unfair business practice.
These are not trending topics. They are legal realities. His eyes locked onto hers. You have lived, he went on, in a world where attention is currency, outrage is strategy, and apologies are just another form of content. In this courtroom, attention buys you nothing, outrage means nothing, and apologies, when empty, change nothing. He straightened. The law, he said, is not an algorithm you can game. The line landed like a thunderclap. A few people in the gallery exchanged glances, half smiles of grim satisfaction tugging at their mouths. They would quote that later, repeat it, share it, caption it. The law is not an algorithm you can game. In that single sentence, he cut through her entire career, her entire worldview, her entire defense. The time for discussion had passed. Now came the part she never believed would touch her. Judgment. Real. Irreversible. Uneditable. I have considered, Judge Wapner said, the evidence presented, the messages, the videos, the contracts. I have listened to Miss Miller. I have listened to you. He folded his hands, looked at Leila with a gaze that saw straight through the makeup, the jewelry, the carefully chosen outfit. What I have seen, he continued, is a pattern of deceptive marketing, reckless use of influence, and an alarming lack of empathy for the impact of your actions. He turned slightly, including the courtroom in his next words. This case is not about whether influencers can do giveaways, he said. It is about what happens when someone with a massive platform lies about what they are offering and then turns their audience against anyone who dare speak up. He looked back at her. Miss Hart, he said, this court finds you liable for defamation and for the harm caused to Miss Miller's business and emotional well-being. Dana's shoulders sagged. Relief, disbelief, a tremor of vindication. It wasn't joy. It was something quieter, heavier. She had spent months doubting herself. Now, at least here, in this record, someone had said it plainly. She wasn't crazy. She wasn't overreacting. She had been wronged. And as for your business practices, Wapner went on, this court finds that your giveaway was misleading at best and intentionally deceptive at worst. You cannot advertise an all-expenses-paid trip and then bury the actual costs and obligations in fine print, then punish the winner when they object. He named the financial penalties. They weren't small. Compensation for Dana's lost income, damages for emotional distress, legal costs. On top of that, an order that Leila issue a public correction, clearly stating the truth about what had happened, in a video that would remain online, not deleted, not hidden behind vague captions. But that wasn't the hardest blow, not to her. Money was something she still believed she could replace. What came next, she couldn't. In addition, Judge Wapner said, his gaze unwavering, this court orders that you refrain from directly or indirectly encouraging your followers to target individuals involved in this case in any way. Any such conduct will be treated as contempt and may carry severe legal consequences. He let that sit for a beat, then added with a finality that carved through the room, and let me be absolutely clear, Miss Hart. He leaned forward. There is no audience here to manipulate. Her eyes flickered. She had been trying, the entire time, with her soft voice, her half smiles, her little gasps of indignation, playing, always, to an invisible crowd. For once, he said, you are not the narrator of this story. You are not the victim. You are not the hero. You are simply one citizen who has misused her power and is now being reminded that even in your world of filters and followers, there is still something above you. He paused. The law. Silence. Thick. Complete. Humiliation doesn't always need shouting. Sometimes it's just the quiet, unmasking truth. In that moment, on that stand, Leila Hart shrank. Not in stature, in presence, in certainty, in untouchability. The courtroom cameras captured everything. The way her shoulders dropped a fraction. The way her lips pressed together, each word of protest dying unspoken. The way her eyes, those icy blue weapons she'd pointed at millions, suddenly looked very, very small. She was escorted back to the defense table. No cuffs. This wasn't a criminal sentence, not yet. But the restraint was real all the same. Invisible, psychological. She sat heavily, hands no longer folded in a pretty pose, fingers now twisted together tightly, knuckles paling as if she were hanging on to the last edge of the world she recognized.
Her lawyer whispered something in her ear, low, urgent. She barely heard him. She was listening to something else, the murmur in the gallery. It wasn't applause. This wasn't a show, but it was something close to release. People stood slowly, gathering their things, still talking in hushed tones. A young woman in the back row wiped at her eyes, not because she knew Dana, but because she knew what it felt like to be dogpiled online by people defending someone they'd never met. A middle-aged man shook his head as he walked out, muttering, "About time someone told them this isn't a game." Even some of the ones who had come to see Leela in person, maybe even to support her, looked different now, less dazzled, more aware. They had watched their idol face a version of truth she couldn't edit away, and they'd watched her fail to rise to it. Dana remained seated a moment longer. She wasn't used to things going her way, not like this, not in such a clear, public, undeniable way. Her lawyer leaned down and said something about paperwork, next steps, formalities. She nodded, eyes still fixed on the bench, on the man who had done something no one online had managed to do.
Separe a performance from the person, the persona from the responsibility. Thank you, she whispered, though he couldn't hear it. He didn't need to. He hadn't done it for thanks. He had done it porque this was what this room was built for. Not for spectacle, for balance. Later, clips would surface online. The ironia wasn't lost on anyone. A mulher que vivia de viral content havia se tornado o sujeito de outro kind de viral video. Snippets de Judge Wapner sendo "The law is not an algorithm you can game" played again and again. His line about her profiting of the very harm she had caused foi cotado em comentários sobre seus outros vídeos. People dug up her "We Need to Talk" thumbnail e juxtaposed com stills do courtroom. Half crying in perfect lighting, then citando stiff-backed under harsh fluorescentes, eyes wide com dawning understanding. For once, the algorithm she worshipped turned on her, not out of cruelty, out of anger, for something it rarely got to show: real accountability, real consequence, real unvarnished justice. Some people still defended her. They always do. They called the ruling too harsh. They said the victim was clout-chasing. They usavam as mesmas tired phrases Leela herself had used. Mas seus vozes estavam mais quietos agora, drowned out por something louder, weightier. Not outrage, not glee. A deep, collective exhale. The sound of people que haviam esperado silenciosamente para ver se haviam alguns lugares left onde spectacle não venciam, onde poder não deixava a última palavra, onde se alguém podia se levantar a uma arma digital e dizer, com autoridade, não, não aqui, não mais. No fim, a imagem que remaneu não foi a influencer em seu cream blazer e glossy lips. Ela não foi suas tias estagiadas ou reerçadas vulnerabilidade. Ela foi o momento em seu rosto chamou, quando realizou seu áudio não podia salvá-la. Ela foi o momento que ouviu, meio que pela primeira vez em sua vida, que havia algo que ela não podia espinar, controlar, deletar. Era o quiet strength in Dana's eyes as she walked out, not triumphant, mas tédia. Sim. Era o inabalável presença de Judge Joseph Wapner na bench, remostrando a todo mundo, viewers, followers, críticos, brands, que não importa quão laudo a internet fique, não importa quantos likes uma mentira colete, there are still rooms onde truth is measured by something deeper than engagement. Rooms onde seu follower count não importa, onde seu choroso thumbnail não importa, onde seu relatável personagem não importa, onde a única coisa que importa é o que você fez e o que custou. Há alguém que nunca pediu ser castado em sua história. Spoiled influencers podem escrever suas vidas, eles podem manipular audiências, eles podem bendar narrativas a seu querer. Mas quando eles vão entre Judge Joseph Wapner's courtroom, eles vão então para um lugar onde seu controle ende e o poder da lei begins.